Hello everyone! Welcome to the last part of Chapter 1. We learned from the previous videos that when we make decisions, we should consider opportunity cost, break down the decisions incrementally using the marginal principle, and finally, use the cost-benefit principle to compare the marginal benefit and the marginal cost of the decisions. Now, we will learn that our choices are affected by decisions made by others, decisions made by us, and decisions made in other markets. We call this the interdependence principle. So what is the interdependence principle? It is the understanding that your choices are not independent. It depends on your other choices. It also depends on others' decisions. It also depends on changes in markets, and it also depends on expectations about the future as well. If there are any changes there that can affect your final choice. Let's look at the different kinds of interdependencies. The first kind is that your choice depends on your other choices. It's called the dependencies between your choices. Second, your choice also depends on the choices of other people or other businesses. This is called the dependencies between your choices and others. Third, there are dependencies between markets. In other words, your choice in one market also depends on the other choices you make in other markets. Lastly, there are dependencies through time. Your choice at one time can affect your future choices. Seems confusing, right? Let's look at an example you are familiar with to understand these concepts, and that is determining how you choose your classes. Let's imagine a regular semester with scheduled class times, not a semester afflicted by a pandemic. If you registered for a Monday night class, you won't be able to register for another class at the same time. That is an example of interdependency number 1, dependencies between your choices. Second, if a student registered for the last spot in a class you needed, then you had to register for another class. Now, this is an example of interdependency number 2, dependencies between other people's choices. Third, you read in the news data market prefers workers with economic training. So you decided to take an economics class. Notice the two markets here. One market about which class to take, and the second market is about the need for those with economic training. This is an example of the third interdependency, or the dependencies between markets. Lastly, your choice of class now affects your future class choices. Since you are taking microeconomics now, you can take macroeconomics in the next semester or in the future. This is the fourth interdependency, dependencies through time. Think about a choice you made today. How is it affected by the other choices you made today, or the choices others made, or maybe your future choices? Now, it's time for us to check our understanding. Let's answer a question. You decide that reading the textbook tonight will lay the foundation for your later success in your economics class. Which of the 4 types of interdependencies is this? A. Dependencies between each of your individual choices. B. Dependencies between people or businesses in the same market. C. Dependencies between markets. Or D. Dependencies through time. If you answer D, you are correct. Notice what's going on in this example. What you're thinking of is if I study now, I will be successful later. So you are thinking of what happens in your future. Now, let's put every core principles we learn together and use it when we confront a problem. We can use an acronym to make it easier to remember. MCOI, marginal, cost benefit, opportunity cost, and interdependence. First, you should break down your problem into a smaller piece. That's the marginal principle. For example, instead of deciding how much coffee to buy, you will decide whether to buy an extra cup of coffee. Second, use the cost-benefit principle to decide whether to buy that extra cup of coffee by comparing its marginal benefit with its marginal cost. Third, compare what else you could do with the money you were going to use to buy coffee. Maybe you could buy a bagel or a smoothie. That's the opportunity cost principle. Lastly, use the interdependence principle. What if your friend buys you coffee? Then, you don't need to decide whether to buy coffee or not. Or what if you saw that tea is cheaper? Then you might buy tea instead of coffee. In that two examples, we were looking at dependencies with our choices and dependencies between other people's choices. Now, we can finally end chapter 1 and let's finish strong with a question. Asking one more allows the blank principle to be analyzed as a simple question. A. Cost benefit. B. Opportunity cost. C. Marginal. Or D. Interdependence. When we ask more, what we are doing is we are using the marginal principle. And we are done. After this video, you know what the interdependence principle is and you know its 4 types. We also learned that there is an order to the 4 core principles so that if you need to make a decision, you can use it to make the decision that will maximize your economic surplus. Now, we can use the 4 core principles of economics to analyze the demand and supply framework in the next chapter. And specifically, in chapter 2, we will learn the demand side of the market, which is our buying decisions. Don't forget to submit your answers for the interactive lecture questions. If you have any questions, post them in the Q&A discussion board or send me a message through Canvas inbox.